Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi continues in chapter 1 of Moed Katan, all about Chol Moed, and we are smack in the middle of Chol Moed Sukkos today, so wonderful timing. We're in chapter 1, Mishnah 8, Mishnah Ches. Hahedyot, a normal, non-expert person, Tofer Kedarko, may sew items normally. Now, first of all, he can't just go sewing anything. He can sew things he needs to wear on Chol Moed or during the festival itself, not for commercial purposes or for later use. Bartner explains Hediot is someone who, when they hem a garment, it's not really perfectly even. And the Mishnah differentiates V'ha'uman, a professional sewer or seamstress or tailor, machliv, has to make stitches like a dog, meaning uneven, like the teeth of the dog. One's even, one's short, one's wide, one's narrow, so they don't look like professional work. Now, it might sound odd if malacha, if work, constructive labor, is forbidden during Chol Moed, then what does it matter if someone makes irregular stitches or oddly shaped stitches or it's uneven? How could that be mutter? So since we have a little time today, the Mishnah are short, I hope you'll indulge me. We'll try to briefly explain the basis of actually a raging debate 1,000 years ago if the restrictions of Chol Moed are biblically based on the Bible itself, or a rabbinical enactment. So let's go way back to the Bible itself in Parshat Pinchas, in Bamidbar, Numbers, chapter 29, verse 12. B'chamisha sar yom lachodesh hashvi, the 15th day of the 7th month, that's this month. Mikra Kodesh is a holy calling. Yihye lechem, for you, kol melechet avodah lo tasu. Any work of labor do not do. V'chagotem Chag Lashem Shivat Yamim, and celebrate a festival for God 7 days. Now, this verse makes it sound like the restriction on Melechet Avoda, on actual labor, might only be on the first day, and yet the holiday continues for 7 days. So what's going on? Is labor restricted for the other 6 days or not? So then later in the same chapter, at verse 35, B'yom Shmini, on the 8th day, Atzeret Tiye Lechem will be a stopping for you. Atzeret, Rashi says, stopping from malacha, stopping from work, as in you can't do work on the 8th day, implying you could do work the previous days. You'll see in Eretz Yisrael, the stop signs say Atzur, so that's probably from this verse. So Kol Melechet Avodah Lo Tasu. So B'yom Shmini, the 8th day, Atzeret Lechem Tiye Lechem Kol Melechet Avodah Lo Tasu. So that's called Shmini Atzeret, as we discussed in great detail in the Mishnayot of Sukkah. The 8th day of Sukkot is really a independent entity. It's Shmini Atzeret. It's a little bit different. But from the verses, we see the first day of Sukkot, the first 2 days outside of Israel, but the first day in Israel, and the 8th day in Eretz Yisrael, you can't do Melechet Avodah. You can't do real work. And yet, for all 7 days of the holiday, it's Chagotem Chag Lashem. You're celebrating a holiday to Hashem. So what about those middle days? That's exactly what we're talking about, Chol HaMoed. And among the Rishonim, like Rashi, for instance, and also the Rif, they hold that it's really a biblical restriction on doing work, but it was given over to the rabbis to define the parameters of this biblical restriction. Other poskim, notably the Rambam, holds that all of these restrictions we're talking about are rabbinical restrictions that are enacted so people will do Hagotem Hag Lashem, but the verses aren't really a biblical requirement. They're what's called an asmachta, a basis for the rabbis to enact these laws so that we actually enjoy Yom Tov instead of going into the office and treating it like a normal time. We enjoy the Chol Moed. Sorry, Yom Tov, of course, malacha is restricted, but so we enjoy Chol Moed, similar to the laws of muksa on Shabbos, which are rabbinical, so we don't do things that are sort of weekday activities on Shabbos. So Baruch Hashem, back to Mishnah Ches, Misargin et Amitod. You can weave your beds. Their bed frames were made, the box springs basically were made of woven ropes with pillows, mattresses on top. Rabbi Yossi Omer Mimotchin. He says you can't weave them originally, the Bartner explains, but you can tighten them if they're already woven. Otherwise, it's too much effort, too detailed to get the weave correct on your mattress. Mishnah says, Ma'amidin tanor v'kirayim v'rechayim b'moed. You can stand up an oven, a stove, or a millstone for grinding on Moed. Now, their ovens were sometimes made, as we saw in the Mishnah in Shabbat, like in different shapes, like a box-shaped, a two-burner box, is a cone shape. But they were actually movable, and then you could cement them down or use mud or something, cement them down to the location you needed to use them. So because you certainly need to cook during Chol Moed and you need to cook in preparation for Yom Tov, you can do that on Chol Moed. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein mechobshin et rachayim betchila. He says we do not conquer. Mechobesh is really conquer, but it's really like rough up, like make grooves in the grinding surface of the grinding mill originally. Apparently, they'd need some sort of a file to make grooves in it so it'll catch the grains or whatever you're grinding and grind them properly. And to do it the first time is very difficult, but if the grooves are already there and you're sort of sharpening the groove so it works better, that would be allowed even Chol Moed. Yasher kochachem, a good Moed, and sei gesund.